the cheapest and easiest way for people to rile up a crowd. But I don't really know how we're going to change that. I do know that what our country's greatest strength is our diversity and our immigrants. It's what separates us from those old world economies in Europe. And from an economic standpoint, it's the only thing that's going to help us compete with the developing economies in Asia right now. The only thing that's going to help us to continue to drive economic growth. And I do believe in growth, and I do believe that free enterprise and sustainability are not incompatible. But I do think that in the State Department right now, I have a friend who is saying that the hottest debate, the things that people sit around talking about philosophically on a political science level is this authoritarian capitalism that we're seeing in places like China and Singapore, is that authoritarian capitalism a better model? Had they figured out something? I think a lot of people don't really think that the socialism that we had in the Soviet Union was a threat to the way that American innovation happens. But I think a country like China that can invest $350 billion in high-speed rail in 5 years is very hard to compete with right now economically, especially when we have a kind of mindset in this country where all of a sudden we're saying we want services, we refuse to pay taxes, and we don't want migrants. Of all those things, on a purely economic level, migrants are the only thing we have going for us. They're the only thing that is going to continue to bring not just the economic spirit, but that innovative spirit I talked about, and that kind of spiritual rebirth that our country needs.
Thanks. Change of pace. What is the most surprising reaction you've ever encountered to one of your films?
I've had corn thrown at me. What's that? No, it was corn right out of the elevator, kind of dried, and it was from some angry corn farmers. That might have to be it. You know, I really make films about some really boring stuff. Agricultural subsidies, infrastructure. So I'm lucky. If a few kernels of corn thrown is the worst thing that ever happens to me, then I'm pretty fortunate.
Okay, another question about subsidies. Where should subsidies be placed, if they should be used at all?
I think subsidies are not a bad thing, and particularly in agriculture, which is so essential to our survival. It's so fraught with insecurities. Subsidies and government payments reflect the values that we want to promote. We want to incentivize things in this country. We wanted to incentivize productivity in the 20th century, and we did a fabulous job doing that by subsidizing commodity grains. Our values are changing. There were unanticipated consequences from subsidizing those things. And I believe that subsidizing fresh foods, subsidizing local foods, is a perfectly appropriate use. What about subsidizing crop rotation? All those brown fields, all those fallow fields in the Midwest all winter long that are not only eroding valuable topsoil, but not grabbing carbon, as plants tend to be pretty good at doing, we can create subsidies that incentivize that. We can create subsidies that help balance, you know, Bob Murray, was that his name? He obviously struck me a lot because I think he said really important and powerful things. And one of the things he said was that, you know, coal is remarkably cheaper. It's remarkably cheaper than those other energy sources. And that is something that we have to look at. We have to lead. You know, when I meet activists, I say, lead with your economics. This is the language that lawmakers are going to listen to. Lead with ways that this is going to make economic sense. And Bob Murray has great evidence behind him to suggest that coal is way cheaper. What he doesn't take into account in that argument is a full cost accounting. Where is it more expensive for us to burn that stuff? And how do we begin to quantify those things that are much harder to measure? We so often make policy in this country based on things that we can measure. In agriculture, we can measure yields, we can measure input costs. We don't really have a good way of putting numbers on soil loss. It's hard to measure public health as a per acre cost. It's even harder to measure stewardship. How do you, when at the end of King Corn, Chuck Pyatt, can no longer continue farming the way he has and loses his farm? How much does that cost us? To me, one of the great legislative challenges of the next century is to, A, we need to think more long term. We need to help our legislators. We need to help them understand that re-election is not just about bringing us a short-term gain, that we can wait for that bridge to nowhere, but we can't wait for him or her to begin working on these long-term problems like carbon in the atmosphere. And that's a perfect good use for subsidies, is to begin to level the playing field, or to use subsidies to reflect the true cost of things and not just the cost at the marketplace.
Last question. What is your economic advice for Olney?
I don't know Olney's economic situation. I've run a couple unsuccessful businesses for a long time. Abby mentioned that I recently opened a grocery store. It's probably the only thing that is less advisable to put your money into than documentary. But those businesses are starting to both pick up steam. And I don't know how or whether a school is supposed to make money. But I do know that there is a way that sustainability has to include economic sustainability as well as ecological sustainability. And I know that you have the things here that society should be rewarding. And as I said before, I would love to help communicate that vision. If you want to show me the books, I'll be happy to take a look. Thank you so much.